carbohydrates are actually not essential to life. And the reason for that is that we can actually create glucose. When we eat carbohydrates, the substrate that's broken down is called glucose, right? And that's the actual the fuel for a lot of our products. Now, there's another type of fuel that we use is called ketones. And so those of you do ketogenic diets, or those who've been with us, we sometimes measure ketones. And so when you do a ketogenic diet, for most of us who are not diabetics, you're going to be okay. But remember, everything we do, there's always a limit and threshold of harm. And so I'm going to talk about carbohydrates. You do need to understand a little bit of this, so you can distinguish between good carbohydrates, bad carbohydrates, etc. Those. So fructose is actually much sweeter than glucose. That's in our fruits and whatnot. Sucrose, is a two polymers of a glucose molecule, so it's a disaccharide. So glucose is a monosaccharide. Saccharide is just another term for glucose. That's a Greek word. And then we have the word. Then we have lactose, which is another disaccharide. And so when you combine these little monosaccharides to multiple chains, multiple units, for example, like the sucrose, let's say you can add to the sucrose and lactose together. Let's say you can combine that, and you get like oligosaccharide, so more than one, right? A few basically. But then if you keep adding those together, you get complex starches, right? And so basically, each one of those pentagon shapes is a glucose molecule. We keep adding to them into a chain, branch out chain, becomes starch. So glycogen is stored via like this, and glycogen is in our muscles and it's in our liver, right? And so the majority of it is in our muscles, and a good about 500-700 grams is also in our liver too as well. Whether it's refined carbohydrates or complex, good, wholesome carbohydrates, they're still complex in that nature too as well. Obviously, it's not going to be this equivalent with respect to nutrients, but the molecular structure are very similar in that respect. And so what's the purpose of glucose? Well, we need energy, right? Glucose is a substrate that is broken down further from the cell to create what we call ATP, adenosine triphosphate. And the triphosphate, that means three of these phosphate bonds, when we break them, that releases the energy, right? And so, when food is made in terms of like plant-based, animal-based stuff, we're creating something, so we're storing energy. So in order to extract it, we got to break it down. So that's what our cells are for. It breaks it down, it gives us energy. And the currency of energy in our body is ATP, adenosine triphosphate. It's not the only one. The ketones is too as well. So, but predominantly 99% is ATP. And so what we have here on the left side, the carbohydrates. It gets broken down. It goes through this process called glycolysis, pyruvate oxidation, citric acid cycle, and this oxidative phosphorylation. If you're able to go through the entire chain of processes, you will maximize amount of ATP you make. So for example, if I take a single molecule glucose, you are able to go through the entire process, you get the maximum amount of ATP, which is about 38 for a single molecule glucose. If I take a fatty acid, which has 6 chains of carbon and very similar to a carbohydrate, and I put it through here, it gets broken down, you get about 44 amounts of ATP. So the same amount of carbon chain in fatty acid versus carbohydrates, you get a little more energy out of it too as well. So if you take protein, you get only 4 molecules, and so very little, right? So you get 4, 44, and 38, right? And so that's why the body likes carbohydrates. So your brain, if it has a choice, will always want glucose as its source. It's easy to break down. It goes through this entire process, and it takes more work for you to break down fatty acids. It takes more work for you to take down some amino acid too as well. This is how complicated the glucose metabolism where it's involved. And if you look at red blood cells, they use glucose too as well, but not the actual glucose. They have to break it down into what we call lactate. But then if you look at the brain up on top there, it uses 2 types of fuel, all right? So it uses glucose. So if it has a choice, it will use glucose. But if you starve yourself, you will start using ketone bodies as well as a source of energy.
When we talk about starvation, we're also, it's a big scary word when we make that statement as well.
Yeah,
It happens in our fasting period during the nighttime as
yes.
well. The body can transfer over there depending on what state.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Today I fasted from, I don't know, it was like 9 o'clock to around 2 o'clock, 1 o'clock. I had some fat metabolism in there, right? So I probably produce a little bit of ketones. But predominantly our diet is typically high in carbohydrate. And so your ketones would be very undetectable, like 0.02 millimoles in your bloodstream if you ever check it, right?